Testing. Hey, guys, we're going to start in a sec, so if everyone just come grab a seat, that'd be great. Thanks. Cool. So, it is bright. I want to welcome everyone. Thanks everyone for coming. Everyone that's watching on the YouTube channel, we really do appreciate it. Grant and I met about a couple months ago, and we've known each other for a very long time, but we met here a couple months ago, and we started talking about some new ways that we could kind of get involved here with the alumni community, especially the younger alumni community. And the obvious answer, I think, was networking. And networking sometimes is more than just having a couple drinks with your buddies. It's a lot about making connections that can help people get jobs or change careers or advice or be a mentor. And I think that Delbarton, what a great place, what a great group of guys to facilitate those connections. So that's kind of where this idea originated. This one is more technology kind of focused, but it could be replicated for medical, lawyers, finance, and kind of any community that Delbarton guys find themselves in. So we're going to go for about an hour here. I want to get started. I'm going to let you guys all kind of introduce yourselves, and if you could give like a 90-second, 2-minute overview of what it is exactly that you do, and then we'll get into some questions, and then we're gonna have the last 20 minutes where you guys can ask questions, and we'll take some questions online. So yeah, let's start with the man himself here, Grant here. I'll start with myself. So Ryan Maresca, I work here at Google. It's a pretty great place to work. I work in business development for Android Pay, formerly Google Wallet. And I started working here about 4 years ago. I was out in California taking some classes, and I made some great connections with some professors. And I interviewed for a really long time in California. The interview process here it's arduous. And I found myself working here in the New York office, and I do very much enjoy it, and Google's a really great company and a really great place. So.
I'm Grant Hewitt. I'm class of 2002. I had a relatively standard kind of career track. I went to Princeton after I graduated from Delbarton, went into finance, worked on a trading desk for about 4.5 years, had started a sports apparel brand on the side as a little bit of a passion project, and realized that my passion really was in initially sports apparel, but really understanding brand and building brands in an e-commerce environment. So I left my job on Wall Street to focus on this full time. That spun out into a number of different businesses, some that we still retain. Two of them, one is Hudson Sutler, which is an e-commerce brand that sells travel goods and things like that. Another Streaker Sports, which is a sports apparel brand. We went through an acquisition earlier this year, so we have another team running that company. We built out an event portfolio, again, all focused on branding, and we were able to actually take those events and sell out of one of them entirely to a digital media platform based in Los Angeles, and another one we still own a stake in that expanded to sports events around pond hockey that's now expanded. It's the largest part of the largest pond hockey organizer in North America.
Hey guys, I'm Chris Verone. I'm class of 2002 as well. First, I want to thank Grant and Ryan for setting this up, and to the other speakers. I've known everyone here as friends and peers, and it's really a thrill for me to speak with you guys. And I think the other important thing about this gathering here is we're all from the same school, and it shows how important this network is. I currently work at a firm called Strategas Research Partners. I'm one of the partners there. I started there back in 2006. We are a Wall Street research firm. We do macroeconomic and investment strategy research for hedge funds, mutual funds, investment shops, and I run the technical analysis team there. And I think what's useful, and what I look forward to talking about as we get going here, is how different mentors along the way, many of which were Del Barton students or Del Barton graduates, kind of helped us all get to where we are. And I look forward to sharing that information.
Very cool. I'm Teddy Kingsbury, class of 2005. I went to Washington Lee right after high school. Got to pretend to be a country boy for a couple of years, which was fun. I now work, I'm the head of business development for Damon John, who's most well known for being the CEO and founder of the global urban fashion brand FUBU, and currently is a shark on the show Shark Tank on ABC. So I help him with a whole bunch of stuff, whatever he wants to throw me that day, but mostly his investments on the show, his investments outside the show, and then we have a consulting business where we work with different brands and celebrities for a whole bunch of different things, from licensing to digital strategy, PR. So some of our clients are Damon himself. He's one of our clients. Work with Carlos Santana, Jillian Michaels, Jen Selter. She's a big person. And then a couple brands like Gillette, Capital One, Amex, whole bunch of different people. So, yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Colangelo, class of 2003. Wanted to also thank Ryan so much. What Ryan did here is really special. He saw a resource that he had, which was access and knowledge of this space and this facility and these connections to these people, and he put it to work for Del Barton. So we all don't have to have enough money to, finance a new wing at Del Barton in order to make a really big difference. We all have these unique
You're
things.
saying I couldn't finance a...
Yes, he's saying that.
So thank you very much, Ryan. It's really a terrific example. I graduated Del Barton in 2003. Like I said, I went to Berkeley on a Naval ROTC scholarship. When I graduated Berkeley, I served 4 years in the United States Navy in San Diego. As I got out of there in a year before I got out of there, I started Golden Coast Mead, which is, some of you might have tried some of this before. It is a beverage made of honey that is alcoholic, and we just started distributing in New York. 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I took over as the executive director for Consumers Research, which is the nation's oldest consumer organization. Thanks, Ryan.
Cool. So I think for myself, it was super important. I've got a great mentor, someone that I could, ask questions to, and will give me just solid, honest advice. I'm wondering, do you guys have mentors? And if you do, can you share a little bit about kind of what that's been like?
I'll start. I think it's important not just to have one, but to have many, and to have them at various points in your life. And when I think about the people who were instrumental in my life along the way, I first start with Del Barton, who was useful, or who had a big impact on my life then. And the guy I want to talk about for a second first, I'm sure many of you know or know of, but Brian Flory had a huge impact on my life from the minute I met him. And I think what I took away from the time that we shared together was that much like the motto of Del Barton, life isn't always easy. You're going to get knocked to the floor sometimes, but it's how you respond from those events that dictate what you can achieve or where you can go. And I think the other important thing that Brian not just instilled in me, but in many others, was the importance of details, the importance of presenting yourselves as a reflection of your family or your colleagues or your peers, how important that is in how other people portray your level of seriousness or what you plan to accomplish. So early on at Del Barton, he was certainly, I think, kind of the first guy that kind of gave me a little kick and got me headed on a path. The next guy who has really been instrumental for me is currently he's the chairman of my firm. His name is Jason Trennert. If you don't know him, he's someone worth looking into. He runs our firm, Strategas. He's also the author of two very popular and useful investment books, a good resource if you're new to the industry or new to the business. But what I always took away from Jason was how he wasn't born into Wall Street. And he came from a middle-class family in Long Island. He worked hard. He got himself accepted into a good college. And then he didn't get the job at Goldman Sachs. And he didn't get the job at JP Morgan. And he did not get the job at Morgan Stanley. He got the back office job at somewhere else. And it goes to show you that there are other routes to success. There are other routes to achievement. It's not always the Goldman Sachs route that gets you where you want to go. And he worked his way up from a back office job to eventually go to work for a firm called ISI, International Strategy and Investment, which is really one of the premier research shops on Wall Street. And then in 2006, he thought it was time to start his own shop. I was working for him at the time, and we started Strategas in 2006. And I think along the way, what you realize is, especially when you're an entrepreneur and when you're starting a new business, and we have seen this with all our colleagues, is everyone wears a lot of hats. There's a lot of jobs that have to be done to ensure the success of a company. And he's been very instrumental kind of in instilling the blue-collar values, not just in me, but in the entire organization. So I think the big picture is, whether it's people you grew up with, whether it's people you work for, find mentors, and don't be afraid to ask people to ask for their advice. People are flattered when you ask for their advice, and don't be afraid to go up the organizational chain. Just because so-and-so is the head of so-and-so doesn't mean he doesn't have time for you or time to share what he knows. People are generally flattered to do that, and I know these guys that sit next to me probably have all had similar experiences, and I'm anxious to hear their views as well.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously, my boss Damon John is huge impact on me. It's been my first and only job out of college is working with him. Started August after graduation and everything. So he has instilled a incredibly different mindset than what I think is taught in. Even when I went to college, entrepreneurship was kind of this taboo thing of people would say, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur," aka I don't have a job and I'm just kind of messing around with some idea here. But the idea of just go out there and do it. Just don't wait for anybody. The ball isn't going to move unless you do. And he has this idea of this thing called the power of broke, and this idea that you have tons of assets in your pocket, you just aren't really using them. And even something like this, like Joe was saying, here's an amazing resource of Google that we're all connecting, and just looking into your network where you might not know a top celebrity if you're trying to get a brand out there, but you might know somebody out there who is connected a couple degrees. And really, it's one of those empty your pockets kind of moment, throw everything on the table and see what you have. But just, echoing that sentiment, I think the big thing about mentorship is a lot of people kind of make it too formal. They're kind of like, hey, can I be your mentor? Or can you be my mentor? And it's a little too rigid rather than, and as somebody who is receiving that message, it's kind of, oh man, what kind of commitment am I signing myself up for? So I think the biggest thing is just talking to as many different people, and don't have a mentor, have many mentors, and just bounce ideas, even if it's, I have this idea for a company or I have this idea for a project. What do you think? Obviously tapping into Del Barton's resources has been amazing, and your college resources and anybody you can really tap into is a huge thing for sure.
Yeah, I would echo that last point very strongly. Having a number of mentors, I wouldn't say that I have any formal mentors, but I've for years kind of made a point to keep in touch with people whose advice is going to save saved me a lot of time learning lessons the hard way. That's kind of the way I view mentorship. Is there are so many people that say, if I knew now what I knew when I was 20 years old, God, I would have avoided so many mistakes. Okay, well then maybe I should start trusting those people instead. So the way that I got into consumers research was through a Del Barton connection that had been recommended to me, introduced to me by one of my good classmates, and we had kept in touch for 2 years before he came to me with a job opportunity. And it was a terrific job opportunity, and I took it. But I was never looking for a job opportunity from him. I was just looking to have somebody that I could bounce ideas off of, that I could go to for advice. And I think one of the tricks is I enjoyed talking with him all the time. If I were on a drive, I would give him a call just to check in and see how it was going. And so it's kind of one of those things with networking. They would say, like, how do you in networking convey that you're interested in the other person? It's like, well, you actually have to be interested. That's the easiest way to do it. And if you're not, it's not even worth your time pretending to be. So it's the same thing with mentorship. Find somebody who you actually respect, who you actually trust, and whose advice you'd be willing to take and who you want to talk to.
It was funny when we talked about mentorship. My initial reaction was like, no, I don't have a mentor, because I didn't have that rigid, like, we meet once a month and we talk about things. I actually find that I have a lot of peer mentors. Being in this small kind of startup brand space, a lot of guys who are older than me, younger than me, have gone through, to your point, through some things that are really, really valuable and really, really helpful. I think it took me a little while to get over the thought that, like, no one wants to share their kind of secrets. And it became very clear that, if you build a relationship 2 ways, people are certainly willing to not only share themselves, but then ask things of you as well. So I think my mentors actually tend to be people sitting on the stage.
Joe, you kind of alluded to this, but I'm curious, what 5 or 10 years kind of into your career, what is a piece of advice that you wish you had right when you were starting? Or even in your career? Just what's something you know now that you wish you knew before?
I would say that the next 9 months are not the rest of your life. So the people often kind of have kind of too large of a discount rate on their future, on their next 40 years. And so don't feel like you need to do the one thing that's going to change your life right now if you have an opportunity to continue moving in a forward direction. So life is not always going to be 10 steps forward and then another 10 steps forward. Sometimes it's going to be 5 steps forward and 2 steps back. But you're headed in the right direction, and don't take 5 steps back in the hope that you're going to go 20 steps forward. Maybe that doesn't make sense, but offline I'm happy to share the personal stories that are associated with that.
How about you guys? Well, give me something you wish you knew, like 7 years ago.
I don't know if anyone read or heard Sheryl Sandberg's eulogy of her husband when he passed away a number of months ago, but one of the lines in the eulogy is, when plan A doesn't work, kick the shit out of plan B. I think that's a useful piece of advice, because plan A is not always going to work out. And you can keep your eye on plan A, but there's often a lot of detours. And I think the big mistake we can make sometimes is viewing those detours as an inconvenience rather than viewing those detours as an opportunity to find a better way or a new way. I think there will be periods in all of our lives, and all of ours included, where something is not going to go as we forecasted it, or something is not going to go as planned, and how we adjust and adapt, and the attitude with which we adjust, I think, is more important than necessarily where the outcome may lead.
I would say, I mentioned it before, but just you can actually do it. That just get the ball rolling, go out there. I think it kind of took me a little bit of time to think, like, when you're in school, whether it's high school or college, you have certain due dates or certain things that you need to do, or you can study your ass off on a test, but the best you're going to get is 100. I think the complete opposite is, you have to set certain goals for yourself, keep going, and there isn't a top for what you can do. There's always something there to keep striving for. So get that ball rolling and keep it going as fast as you can for as long as you can.
I might just add to that, particularly when you're first out of college, what the paycheck says every week or every 2 weeks is the least important thing by a factor. It's nice to get a paycheck, but when you're thinking about what you want to accomplish, that I think should be the least of your focus, at least initially. Find what you want to do. I think the rude awakening sometimes is that your first job may not be the job that you like, or may not be the job that you thought it would be. That's okay. Adjust and adapt. But money, I think, is especially when you're first out of school, is the least important thing that should be on your radar in terms of valuing your success or valuing your worth in what you're doing.
My advice actually kind of ties together the two things. I think I spend way too much of my time trying to make things like perfect instead of just getting them done. And I think I'm still guilty of it now, trying to make things perfect versus getting them done. But it's kind of trite and probably stitched on a number of pillows. But like, yeah, just do it and fix it later.
Yeah, I would echo Verone too. I wouldn't worry about a paycheck or a title or anything like that when you're starting. It matters where you finish, not where you start. The interview question I think I hate the most is the 5-year question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm curious the opposite way. Where did you see yourself 5 years ago as compared to where you are now? And if you saw yourself where you are now, I mean, that's cool too, but I wonder how much your vision has changed in the past 5 years.
I initially saw myself as a platoon leader of a SEAL team, and that did not work out. And that kind of ties into.
Raise your hands. Anybody else here? No.
So I think 5 years ago, I probably didn't see myself doing what I'm doing now. I think maybe I was shooting for a senior manager, senior consultant at a consulting firm, something like that. But I said yes to a lot of things that came my way in the meantime, and that's what kind of got me here.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was going to look like. I graduated in 2009 from undergrad and wasn't exactly the best year to graduate from school. Kind of was, it was one of those things where, myself included, all my friends, you have one idea of a job that you're going to go out to, and I ended up working for the founder of FUBU. So, it's not exactly, I think 5 years ago, the show was struggling. It was like its second year, it barely got a second season, and the show kind of, has been a lifeblood for a lot of the stuff that I've been doing. So I think it's actually been way better than I thought it would be. I thought maybe, the show will be on for 2 seasons and then I'll do something else. Maybe there's a Wall Street job I can get into or something for some stability. But it was one of those things where I had no idea what was going to happen. And, maybe kind of naively, I was like, well, I just graduated from school. I still have plenty of time to figure stuff out. So it's been a crazy up and down sort of journey, but it's definitely been a cool one for sure.
I might add to that. Maybe looking back 10 years, I was graduating college. I was an 06 Villanova graduate. I had no idea what I wanted to do come senior year, so I kind of punted and took that 5th year option. And I got a master's degree out of it, but that took a little convincing. And then I'm willing to guess 10 years ago, I couldn't have told you the difference between a stock and a bond. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I thought maybe I'd be a history teacher or a gym teacher or something along those lines. And I think what changed is, again, going back to the mentorship thing, there are people around you that expect more of you. And you start to see your peers and your friends aspire to certain things, and you start to aspire to those things as well. So I did the whole, toss my resume out to every bank out there, and I don't think I got one phone call back or one email back. And that's when, that was maybe spring of 05 or something like that. And that's when I kind of went back home and went back to my roots and, made the phone call to the Alumni Association at Barton, had a meeting with Father Giles, talked about what I wanted to do, how I wanted to get there. and it's how he initially put me in touch with a fellow by the name of Don Rissmiller, who is currently a business partner of mine now, but he was the guy who initially hired me at a firm called ISI, and it was this Delbarton network and this Delbarton relationship that I knew was there to take advantage of, and not that anything here, and there's no handouts in this world, but we're fortunate to have people who genuinely care about the success of everyone in this room, and it was really instrumental in helping me kind of decide to take the first step and figure out what exactly it was that I wanted to do.
5 years ago, I was convinced that Streaker Sports was going to be the next great vintage apparel brand, and we would have already sold to Under Armour by now. That didn't happen. And saw, I guess 4.5 years ago, I was told by someone who was very smart and had made a lot of money in retail that was never going to happen. I still think there's an opportunity. But saw another opportunity and pivoted and learned a lot from some of the kind of hurdles and trips that we had along the way.
I think Teddy kind of hinted at this, but the Delbarton motto is "Cut us down, we grow back stronger." So, give me an example of kind of a moment where things were going not great, and you had to kind of pull your way through it and persevere. I'm curious to a time in your life when things weren't always as great as they are now.
I'll go first. This no example sticks out of my mind more clearly than this one. I had gotten out of the Navy. I had a 3-month-old son. Moved to DC. My wife was in law school, and I found this amazing job. It was a startup that was for military and Groupon for military, and oh my gosh, it was terrific. It was going to be the best thing in the world. I was so excited. I took over national sales for them, and after 11 and a half months, they laid off the entire sales team. And I had taken a pay cut for that, but I was equity focused. I said, this is great. They're gonna raise more money. Everything's gonna be successful. And so I was looking at, I kind of built my entire persona, my life around this idea that I was not working for the man anymore. I had been in the Navy for 4 years, and most people transition out and they go to Booz Allen, and I was so focused on not going to a consulting firm. But I had 2 kids at that point, and so I went to Booz Allen, and it was terrific. I learned so much about consulting, and I treat Booz Allen as I think it would probably apply to a lot of other maybe banking jobs. So I know they're longer hours, but consulting jobs as kind of like a career incubator. So as you are trying to advance your own career, it's nice to have that paycheck so you're not scrambling. They always say, somebody who interviews for a job who doesn't have a job, it's easy to tell that they don't have a job, that they need one rather than somebody who has a job. So I went, it wasn't my ideal job. I was really not maybe happy on the day-to-day, and it kind of took a lot for me to say, I'm breaking away from my identity as the founder of Golden Coast Mead and the full-time startup head of sales to go and do this every single day for almost a year, and that was for me, that was a really tough decision, and I think I came out of it a lot stronger.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. So one of the things I do is I work with all Damon's Shark Tank investments from the show, and I kind of absorb a lot of their problems sometimes, inventory problems or, random stuff that happens. I don't know, I think for me personally, though, and it's not to say that I haven't had, struggles with all this stuff, but was, graduating college, you think, well, cool, I went to school for 4 years. There should be a job somewhere out there, and then you realize that's not the case. And there was one day I was with my parents. It was like a Tuesday in the summertime in August, and I'm hanging out with a bunch of 3-year-old kids at like a pool or something. I'm like, I've had enough parent time right now. I need to go do some work. So I just started throwing my resume everywhere, wherever I could, and And then I got this one random job posting. It said, CEO of fashion company has a new reality show, needs help. I'm like, perfect. That sounds promising. Let me go with that. So I threw it in. Didn't hear from anybody for a while. Finally get like a cryptic email. Can you be at this interview at this time? Yeah, I'm just hanging out with a bunch of 3-year-olds. No problem. I'll definitely do that. So I'm in the Empire State Building. I'm wearing a Brooks Brothers suit, probably some kind of salmon tie, and the elevator doors open, and I see the FUBU sign, and I'm like, oh, God damn it, how is this gonna turn out? And ended up, salmon was good. And, it was one of those things where I had an opportunity. Damon's like, look, I got this show. I don't know how it's gonna do. I need help managing all this stuff, and I need you to work for free for a couple months. And I'm like, you know what? Let me do that. So I said, I'll intern for you for 6 months, completely for free. Luckily, had 2 brothers living in the city, so a lot of couch time there. And it was one of those things where you just, again, I've said it before, but you just got to keep going. Throw opportunities out there as much as possible, because you never know what might hit. And the craziest, sort of message or job opportunity might turn into something really cool. So
we are the companies that he has to deal with. Yeah, I think on a regular basis, I'm dealing with a lot of failure that we have to learn from and move on. I actually think it's top of mind because it's relatively new, but we had not a good situation regarding a product that we launched a couple months ago, but that since we learned our lesson. I think we've put some procedures in place to make sure we don't make those mistakes again. But that actually since has led to recently like one of our largest single days of revenue on the books, kind of an indirect tie to that specific failure. So I know exactly what Teddy's talking about in terms of having numerous cut downs.
I would just add, and I spoke a little about this before, but when you're 21 or 22 years old and people reject you, it stings, right? And it stings for people to say, well, you're not good enough to come work here, you're not good enough to come work here. I think the more you can utilize that as motivation, or the more you can put the chip on your shoulder and say, well, watch what I do next, or watch what I do now. I think that's just I think while it's a simplistic attitude, I think it's an extremely useful kind of life tool. As far as the broader picture, just by a function of what I do every day, markets are extremely humbling. Markets humble you every single day. And I think what I've had to learn, particularly as you get older, is just the realization that you're going to probably be wrong more than you're right. But it's adjusting to the environment when the facts change. I think there are a lot of people in our industry who forget that the goal of the game is not to get 21, but to beat the dealer. And I think sometimes we focus too hard on getting 21 when the objective is just to beat the dealer.
To Chris's point there, just to exemplify his chip on the shoulder, all I ever wanted to do was go to the Naval Academy my senior year at Delbarton, and when that was the last rejection letter I got, I took $200, which was a ton of money for me at the time, and framed all my rejection letters, and they still hang in my home office on the wall.
Wow, that's good advice right there. Frame your rejection letters. Cool. So I'm sure everyone here on the stage sees a lot of resumes and does some hiring or interviewing. I'm curious. 2 qualified people, person A and person B. What stands out for you when you're looking to hire someone at your company or someone that's going to work with you? What's a piece of advice you could give to people that are out there that are interviewing or trying to change kind of what they do or sectors of what they do and go into something new?
I would just add, we get a lot of resumes all the time, and at some point it comes down between one person, and I think it's often very evident who the hungrier person is, and that's often not the most qualified person. I think we spend a lot of time, probably too much time, focusing on where you went to college, what your last name is, all these things that at the end of the day really have very little weighting in whether or not you're going to be a good employee or a good hire. We try to hire the person on who's the hungriest, who needs this the most, who wants this the most. And I think that comes across in a lot of different ways. I'd say, number one, particularly after we first interview someone, there are those that send you handwritten notes, and then there are those that send you emails. The people who send the handwritten notes get put into a different pile. They get put into the pile, this kid took the time to write me a note and put it in the mail. I want to have him back. Even if that first interview wasn't that great, it shows a certain care for, it shows a certain discipline and a certain care that this person wants to be part of a team. And we look at little details like that, I think, as a broader reflection of your character and how hungry you are. I also like people who just beat down my door. I like people who we say no to, who come back and come back and come back and come back and almost make you hire them. That's what we look for. And I would guess, or I would say, the times we've had bad hires, the times we've erred, is because we hired the person who we perceived was just the most qualified, and we kind of ignored all the other stuff. And we said, you know what, he went to Princeton, no offense, Grant, or he went to so-and-so, he must be good. There's a lot more factors that I think at the end of the day are probably a little bit more important.
Yeah, I mean, when you say hungry, we say hustle. I love guys who hustle, and you find it, and Ted touched on it earlier, actually, people who don't have assets or a plan or funds or anything and are like, this is how we're going to execute this plan, and it's all hustle. Related to that, referrals are huge. I mean, we've benefited from referrals, and you have to go and ask for them. People don't like pay attention to everything you're doing all day and saying, oh, hey, I saw you applied to this program or this job, and I know someone that works there. Let me go out of my way and make your referral. You know, you guys have to go out, reach out to people and say, hey, listen, I'm putting my name in the hat. I think, you know, a couple kind words from you would go a long way. And I know for us internally, that's like number 2 on the list in terms of things that we look for.
Yeah, I just love to see the kind of what Chris was saying, the hustle, but it's showing that you're doing something more than just what is asked for you. Like, the thing that always bothers me is when you tell somebody, hey, do this assignment, and they go, here you go, I did it, there you go. And it's kind of to that, like, thing I was saying before, you can only score 100 on a test in school and everything. It's like people who have certain elements of their resume that say, you know, I started this charitable organization, or sometimes I do this. It's the person who clearly does not clock in, clock out, get out of there, I did my time, thank you, you know, I got my paycheck sort of thing. It's the person who really is looking to show that, you know, when they're going to turn in an assignment or work on a project, they're going to say, all right, I did everything you asked, I took care of that, but have you thought of A, B, or C? And we might say, yeah, we did, and those are the worst ideas we've ever heard, but that's okay. Thanks for thinking of them, because you see that person is kind of more vested. They're interested in what they're doing, and you know they're always thinking. Because the person who is just doing their job and that's it, you know, is going to be, you know, in my mind, the biggest liability when trying to build a team and get everyone to do stuff. And when the going gets tough and everyone's back is against the wall and you need to get a hit, they're going to be the person that strikes out for sure.
We had an intern this summer ask for a raise. Don't be that guy.
I can't really add much other than saying that between Golden Coast Meat and Consumers Research, I've hired, I'm up to 12 full-time employees, and I've never once advertised the position. So if you're waiting to see an advertised position from somewhere, you're already competing with everybody who's an inbound lead.
I would just have to, if you're waiting for a phone call back, you're on the wrong side of the conversation. Make the phone call yourself. I think especially with a lot of these big corporations with the big HR programs, it's so easy just by mistake or by however your resume or application can so easily get lost in the shuffle. Pick up the phone and call someone and leave a voicemail. I feel that these methods of communication are so underutilized because everyone just writes emails or sends text messages. Focus on the personal connection, and I think it's easier for that person then to see in that role or hiring you.
I think there's a lot of buzzwords that go on now, and I think one of them is personal branding, right? Everyone says you got to build your personal brand and make sure your personal brand is, a solid version of what you want people to perceive you as. I'm curious, your thoughts on personal branding and what you think, kind of in this social media driven world, what you can do to make sure that you keep a good personal brand and you show really the best version of yourself.
I always go to an Onion article. If you haven't seen it, please Google "I am a brand," says pathetic man. It's just so I always try to look at that article anytime I'm thinking
We'll link
what
that
is the
in the YouTube video?
Yeah, what is the Joe Colangelo brand? And then I go, let me go read that Onion article again. But I don't know. I think it's being genuine for Golden Coast Mead. It's highlighting how close we are to nature, and that's all driven by my partner Frank. Even though I'm in charge of marketing, he's the biggest hippie in the world, and we've gotten inbound fundraising requests. A huge partnership with Whole Foods since we were just a little baby company, and that we've maintained because he believes what he preaches. So it's like Mark Twain says. When in doubt, tell the truth. That's what everybody remembers. But the second half of that is because then you don't remember who you told what. You don't have to remember who you told what to. Being yourself, as corny as that is, it's more efficient than seeking out what the world wants you to be.
Yeah, the big thing about personal branding is it is, what you show to the world is cool and everything, but at a certain point, if you're portraying a lifestyle or thoughts or something that isn't truly genuine, it's going to show through at a certain point. So I wouldn't even focus about your personal brand. It's focus on, personally what you are, who you are, what are your values, and just let everything echo off of that. Because if you're focused on your personal brand, your perception of what other people are thinking of you, I think you start playing too many head games with yourselves and you get into a spiral sort of thing, and just focus on what's important, which is your core of what you're trying to communicate out there. And then kind of like what Joe said, it will do the trick for itself.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think particularly in a smaller corporate environment where 60 people, as an example, the idea of a personal brand is the antithesis of the team player, and we focus really hard on kind of getting everyone on board. And when you have someone who's more worried about their own brand than the success of the firm, because the success of the firm should just by definition help your own brand, but they should work in that order. And I think the more people focus on themselves, the more they're kind of missing the point. And I think that becomes pretty evident over time, especially in a small organization. I would also say, and this is kind of said already, but be genuine. It's very uneasy to not be yourself, and I think as you get older, it becomes even more uneasy to not be yourself. Be genuine, be sympathetic. In 2008, during the financial crisis, a lot of our clients were having really tough years, and one thing we did was, as a Christmas gift, we sent a lot of clients, we sent them boxing gloves with the words inscribed in them, it's been a tough year, but we're in your corner. Stuff like that, I think, to show your compassion towards someone or a client or a customer does a lot more to helping your brand than posting pictures of yourself on Instagram or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's being genuine and authentic. I got a lesson in personal branding, actually, and it was kind of a point I touched on earlier, is that, share yourself. Don't be overly self-promotional, but share yourself, because there's people who want to support you and who are willing to reach out and help or want to support you in terms of being a referral or something like that.
Cool. So I've done enough question asking here. Any questions from the audience here? Anybody up here? No? There's a mic right over there if you want to. All right, not everyone at once. This is we're civilized here.
How we doing, guys? So at this stage in your careers, I think most well, at least people in my generation, a couple years younger than you, are looking up to you, assume that with what you've done, there's no fear, there's a fearlessness. And I think the question that I'm wondering is, what has been a fear trigger? How have you overcome it? And what are you worried about today, looking forward?
I would just say, I can't speak for these guys, but there's a fear every single second of every single day. I think paranoia is one of the most motivating, one of the most motivating reasons why you get up and go to work every day, because you're paranoid that someone's going to take market share from you or someone's going to do a better job. So I think paranoia, in a lot of, for lack of a better word, is maybe kind of the healthy expression of fear. Because I think, again, I can't speak for these guys, but there's a constant fear that someone's going to be better or someone's going to do a better job, and I think that's extremely motivating at the end of the day.
Everybody with kids that are older than mine or that have graduated college or high school always comes up to me and says, it goes so fast, and they have this sense of urgency, like they're almost like talking to their younger self, like pay more attention, be more present, or don't do what I did, and that's my greatest fear on a daily basis, is that I am traveling a lot, I'm working very hard, and every time that I'm doing work, I'm saying to myself, this is important, I have to do this, and it's, I recently calculated the number of weekends I have left before my oldest goes to college, and it's something like 630, and I'm like, wow, that is a finite number of weekends. So maybe that's a little depressing. I mean, probably you're not here if you have kids. Maybe
How long did that take?
One weekend?
I actually did it while I was answering the question. So it's
Working
that
out 2
thing, and
times.
that kind of plays into the rest of life. I think my biggest fear. I don't really operate in a market share environment for the products. We're growing a new category at this point, but my fear is that I'm just gonna fill up my bag of accomplishments and empty my bag of family fulfillment, maybe.
Yeah, I think fear is great. It's awesome. It's just about how you react when you get punched in the face. Who's that? Mike Tyson. Yeah, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, sort of thing. So it's about internalizing that and using that paranoia, whatever it is that's shaking you, and internalizing it and using that as the driving force, because you're always going to have a problem, and how badly it shakes you and how long you're shaken for is what's going to, I think, the difference maker between somebody who's successful and who's not.
A big driver for me are all tied to fear is accountability. I find myself working harder and getting more things done when I'm accountable to other people. And I am wildly competitive, and there is definitely a hit list of people who have wronged me or challenged me over the last couple years. And there's times where some of it's just that. Like, I want to do this job better just to kind of stick it to that guy.
I don't know why you're looking at me right now. I didn't challenge you at all. Let's see. It's definitely not market share, although that sounds terrifying. Google is certainly not a big fear-driven place. I would say in the kind of startup-y world, there's always going to be people that leave and take huge risks, and sometimes they ask you to come along on that ride. And there's always the worry that you'll miss out on like a Snapchat. I'm sure there's plenty of people that could have went and worked at Snapchat and were like, I'm comfortable where I am. I don't want to do that. And now they're probably sitting home kicking themselves. But yeah, I think that would be knowing when to leap is certainly something that I think about a lot. What else? We gotta have one more question here. Yeah, just line up. There's a mic there.
Kind of building off that point, for Chris, Grant, what kind of is that breaking point where you have a very comfortable job, you're making a nice salary, you're comfortable where you are? What's that breaking point where you're ready to kind of make that leap of faith into your own new thing and kind of go all head first into the water?
That's a good question. It's easier for me to answer maybe from the opposite way. I can tell you what isn't or what shouldn't be the breaking point. And what shouldn't be the breaking point is if your friends are making more money than you, that shouldn't be the motivation to go try and do something different, because I really just don't think it matters for a long time. Maybe to answer the question the first way that you posed it, I think there comes a point, particularly when you've been at a job for a period of time, where you need to see some road to. I think you have to answer yourself: is there one day in the future where I could run this place? And if the answer to that question is no,
No.
then no. Well, or run your group, or run your group, or run your team, or run something. Is there a day that I can see? Is there a path I can see where I'm in a position of leadership or a position of management? And I think if the answer to that question is no, then maybe it's time to start to find somewhere where that could be the case or could be a possibility. But again, it's probably not a great answer, but it's kind of how I think about things.
I don't think there is a I don't think there's like a point in time where I was like, this is definitely the right time. I knew that I didn't like doing what I was currently doing, and I'm like one of those dorks who has like kind of inspirational quotes around me all the time. And there was one article that was, if you wouldn't do your job for free, then quit. And it circled around my head for a while, and then I just, I quit on a Tuesday. Like, it wasn't really premeditated. I
Quits
knew
on a Tuesday.
I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing. Didn't know if my leap was going to work, but kind of was in that position where I said, I'm not going to forget myself if I don't roll the dice at some point. So what's the difference between now or 6 months or a year or so?
Nassim Taleb has this kind of structure of anti-fragility, right? And part of it is creating a system that the more chaos is introduced, the stronger it becomes. And so it's kind of also that the more you can do, I think we often discount the upside of doing something that does not have a safety net, and we kind of overestimate the downside of it. If you go and do something for 11 months and you have not made as much money as you would somewhere else or where you had been for 11 months, and then that thing fails, you are not necessarily worse off. If you are building, as Chris has alluded to many times, soft assets over that period. So my rule was always, I will not make bets that can go to zero, that I can lose 100% of the value over the age of 30. But until then, I will pursue aggressively those bets, and then become. So you can fail at everything that you've tried at under 30. But if you at any time really, it depends on how much you take on over 30. But up until then, if you fail at 10 things, you are in a much better place than if you have kind of failed at one. So introduce chaos into your life, introduce kind of more randomness. Zuckerberg didn't say, I'm going to make Facebook and it's going to be $1 billion company. He was coding things every single week and every month. And so the more randomness you have, the more projects that you can attach yourself to, the more likely that one of those things is going to be the next Snapchat. And it's not just that, it's networking, it's interacting with people rather than staying at home and chaos.
Yeah, that's good.
I would also just add,
I got a good piece of advice a long time ago from a father of my friend from Dublin.
Can you speak in the microphone?
Sure. I got a good piece of advice a long time ago from a father of a fellow classmate. It was, do it on the side. And then the beauty of doing a business on the side is eventually your salaries start to get close, and then once it kind of crosses, then you drop the other one. And you just don't start with nothing. You got to build it up, because it takes time to get the things going, and it takes a lot of pieces to get in place until it's a real viable company. You don't want to save all your money to, I've done this, save all your money, quit your job, try something, and start from scratch. You kind of want to build it up over time. So
I was just going to add, don't confuse expert advice with good advice. There's, I'm going to butcher this quote, but I think it's from Bill Buckley, who said he'd rather be governed by the first 200 names in the Boston phone book than the faculty at Harvard. And I think there's some truth to that. There's a lot of expert advice out there. Not all of it is very good. Kind of focus on making your own path. And I think the other thing that is worth talking about, if you want to go to a career in finance or a career in technology, learn about everything, not just finance or technology. Read history, read English. These are all things that I think can separate you from your competitors or your peers when you can draw on history or draw on literature, so on and so forth. The more, I think, in a lot of ways, the more well-rounded you are in some respects, the more conversations you could have with someone about a lot of different things can be pretty useful.
Joe, you kind of already touched on this, but I'd love to hear the whole panel's thoughts on this idea of premature optimization, which is really, I guess you could look at it professionally as an individual or as the organizations you're part of, where a lot of people think that, as an entrepreneur, you're trying to build this model, and then once it hits, you're going to put everything behind it, right? What are your thoughts, I guess, on, in your career as kind of like, once you feel you found something that's really working, putting all the chips in on that versus kind of exploring and spreading out? And how, I guess, maybe more for you, Ryan, how do you feel that like an organization encourages its team members to continue to experiment and not, overload what's working?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm super lucky that I landed here because certainly moving around internally and even externally, people are very comfortable with, and it's perfectly normal and natural here to go around and interview at different parts of the company, and it's such a huge organization that's has its hand in so many things that you're very much encouraged if you're interested in something that's completely divergent from what you're doing right now to go and try it. And I don't know that every sector is kind of like that. I don't know much about finance or banking, but from what I've heard, I think it's a little bit more risk averse to move around internally. But certainly in the tech world, it's you're encouraged to kind of explore different things, because in the end, it makes you just a more well-rounded kind of employee, and I think that's super important here.
We're always kicking around ideas. A